Hey guys, this is Nora Ash, and this video I'm going to be discussing the ordinary life portion of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and the Hunger Games. The ordinary life portion of the hero's journey is exactly what it sounds like. It is the everyday life of the hero before the call to adventure happens. In Harry Potter, this is everything that occurs before Harry gets his letter to Hogwarts. In the Hunger Games, this is everything in the book until Primrose Everdene's name is drawn from the Reaping Bowl. The ordinary life introduces the reader to the world at large of the book, as well as the main character. It also does two very important things. It introduces the A plot and the B plot of the book. The B plot, which is more the character's drives and motivations, is going to be discussed more in the next video. This video is going to be focusing on the A plot. First off, what is the A plot? The A plot is the major conflicts of the book. If you had to distill the entire book down into one sentence, that would be the A plot. For example, in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry gets a letter to go to a wizarding school where he learns the skills and abilities to save the Sorcerer's Stone and defeat Voldemort. In the Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen volunteers to go in her sister's place, to enter the Hunger Games as a tribute, and to emerge with Peeta as the victor of the Hunger Games. In both of these books, the villain spurs on the A plot, and to telegraph to the reader what exactly is coming in the climax, it's important to introduce the villain early in the story. In fact, both of these books introduce the villain in the first chapter. When introducing the villain in the ordinary life, it can be broken down into three scenes. Something is amiss, the acknowledgement by the characters that something is amiss, and the final exposition, including the crystallizing ta-da moment that really lets the reader know who the villain is. In Harry Potter, the three scenes could be broken down as Mr. Dursley's workday, Mr. Dursley's evening, and the discussion between Professor McGonagall and Professor Dumbledore. In the Hunger Games, the three scenes could be broken down as Katniss in District 12, Katniss in the woods outside of District 12, and Katniss in District 12 on the Reaping. In the first scene, which is Something's Amiss, it introduces a very ordinary world. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone has Mr. Dursley and Mrs. Dursley starting out their workdays. In the Hunger Games, Katniss is waking up from her bed and getting ready to go out. The A plot formally gets going in both of the books when the teaser begins. The teaser is the moment where something amiss is first alerted to the reader. In Harry Potter, it goes as follows. Mr. Dursley hummed as he picked out his most boring tie for work, and Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as she wrestled a screaming Dudley into his high chair. None of them noticed a large tawny owl flutter past the window. At 8:30, Mr. Dursley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dursley on the cheek, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed, because Dudley was now having a tantrum and throwing his cereal at the walls. "Little tyke," chortled Mr. Dursley as he left the house. He got into his car and backed out of number 4's drive. It was on the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar: a cat reading a map. So that scene has Mr. Dursley unaware of the owl acting strange, but he does notice a cat reading a map, which is a fairly fantastical thing in itself. There's also this line: Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window in his office on the 9th floor. If he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the owls swooping past in broad daylight, though people down in the street did. They pointed and gazed open-mouthed as owl after owl sped overhead. In the Hunger Games, the teaser is as follows. Our part of District 12, nicknamed the Seam, is usually crawling with coal miners heading out to the morning shift at this hour. Men and women with hunched shoulders, swollen knuckles, many of whom have long since stopped trying to scrub the coal dust out of their broken nails and the lines of their sunken faces. But today, the black cinder streets are empty. Shutters on the squat grey houses are closed. The reaping isn't until 2. May as well sleep in, if you can. And there's this line. My father could have made good money selling them, but if the officials found out, he would have been publicly executed for inciting a rebellion. Most of the peacekeepers turn a blind eye to the few of us who hunt because they're as hungry for fresh meat as anybody is. In fact, they're among our best customers. But the idea that someone might be arming the scene would have never been allowed. There's a very strong hint that something is making the people restless, something to be frightened of, something amiss. When the characters transition from that scene into the next scene where they actually acknowledge something is wrong, it starts to bring the reader up to speed with what this flavor of the book is going to be. In Harry Potter, it's something fantastical and magical. In the Hunger Games, it's something dystopian and oppressive. The acknowledgement in Harry Potter has moments like this line. Mr. Dursley sat frozen in his armchair. Shooting stars all over Britain? Owls flying by daylight? Mysterious people in cloaks all over the place? And a whisper about the Potters. Mrs. Dursley came into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea. It was no good. He'd have to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. Petunia, dear, you haven't heard from your sister lately, have you? As he expected, Mrs. Dursley looked shocked and angry. After all, they normally pretended she didn't have a sister. No, she said sharply. Why? Funny stuff on the news, Mr. Dursley mumbled. Owls, shooting stars, and there are a lot of funny-looking people in town today. So? Snapped Mrs. Dursley. Well, I just thought maybe it was something to do with, her crowd. So, with Mr. Dursley acknowledging that something is amiss, the reader is now clued in to what sort of world they're going to be entering. In this case, a fantasy magical world. In the Hunger Games, there's acknowledgements of the oppressiveness that's illustrated in this line. His expression brightens at the treat. Thank you, Prim. We'll have a real feast. Suddenly he falls into a capital accent as he mimics Effie Trinket, the maniacally upbeat woman who arrives once a year to read out the names at the reaping. And I almost forgot! Happy Hunger Games! He plucks a few blackberries from the bushes around us. And may the odds! He tosses a berry in a high arc towards me. I catch it in my mouth and break the delicate skin with my teeth. The sweet tartness explodes across my tongue. Be ever in your favor, I finish with equal verve. We have to joke about it, because the alternative is to be scared out of your wits. In The Hunger Games, with the acknowledgements, the reader realizes there is something to be frightened of coming up at this reaping. This then transitions us into the third and final scene, the exposition of the villain. We get the villain's name, we get their motivations, or at least we get some of their actions that earn them this villainous title. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, there's finally the crystallizing line where Professor McGonagall asks Dumbledore this. Professor McGonagall's voice trembled as she went on. That's not all. They're saying he tried to kill the Potter's son, Harry. But he couldn't. He couldn't kill that little boy. No one knows why or how, but they're saying that when he couldn't kill Harry Potter, Voldemort's powers somehow broke. And that's why he's gone. So from these discussions, we now know that Voldemort is the darkest wizard of all time who actually tried to murder a baby. In the Hunger Games, in a similar vein, there's the final crystallizing line that goes like this. Taking kids from our districts, forcing them to kill one another while we watch. This is the Capitol's way of reminding us how totally we are at their mercy. How little chance we would stand of surviving another rebellion. Whatever words they use, the real message is clear. Look how we take your children and sacrifice them, and there's nothing you can do. If you lift a finger, we will destroy every last one of you, just as we did in District 13. In that line, they tell the reader exactly how evil they are. They collect kids to round them up for an annual death match to prove their oppressive regime's power. Both of these villains are telegraphed fully within the first chapter, so the reader is not surprised when the climax arises who our hero is ultimately going to be fighting. So to summarize, the A-plot is introduced broadly with something amiss, the acknowledgement of something amiss, and the final exposition and ta-da moment that lets the reader know who the villain is. Please check out the next video to learn about the B-plot and how that is introduced in the ordinary life. If you liked this video, please hit like. If you really liked it, please hit subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.